And so now we get to meet a fellow I've never met virtually or otherwise, and I don't know how many of you had an opportunity. And that is Mike Morrice, and coming to us from maybe from Kitchener. I'm not sure where you're at, Mike, but is your microphone on?
It is. Hi, Dan.
Hello there.
You can hear
Thank
me,
you
then all
for
is
coming.
working okay.
Oh, wonderful. And thank you so much for coming to speak with us today.
Gosh, happy to. It's a real honor to be invited. So thanks, and how wonderful to see all of you. It's part of where I was reflecting on what to bring to this conversation and thought to myself, well, these are the people who know how to win elections and win re-elections. These are the people who know how to keep riding associations going for year over year, how to best support an MP. So there's a little bit of imposter syndrome with me this evening or this afternoon for all of
Oh,
you.
no,
In that,
no, 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 no.
what do I have? What do I have to offer the Greens who know how to win? So maybe what I can do is watch the chat so that if folks have questions that you want to know from me, but maybe what I can just share is a bit about who I am, if that might be of interest to all of you. As
Yeah.
imagine some of you are thinking, who is this Green out in Ontario? What happened there? And so maybe I can just share a little bit of the story from Ontario, from Kitchener Center, and maybe try to spend 5 minutes or so doing that. And then I'll watch the chat. And if Dan, if you others would want to, just curious where you'd want me to spend more time or talk more about, happy to do that. Because
Okay.
again, I feel like I'm in the heartland here. This is the most energized EDA in the country. So anyway, so if I do some of that, I can share about myself with you. When I first met Elizabeth, I was leading a small nonprofit in Waterloo Region. We called it Sustainable Waterloo Region, and I was just upset that the politicians weren't doing anything about climate change. And I was just graduating from a business program at Wilfrid Laurier, and thought, if the politicians aren't doing it, maybe we could work with the business community and have them go above and beyond. And so worked for the next 5 years, starting a local nonprofit that got businesses setting goals to reduce their carbon footprint and reporting back on the progress they were making. Everything from small high-tech companies to big insurers, thinking that if you say you think this is in your best interest, then why don't you follow through? And let's it's a mix of like, let's give you some help, let's also give you some new accountability. And if we measure it and the media talks about it and gives awards for those that do well, maybe we can have you not just compete on profit, but compete on emission reductions. And also the wild idea was that we would charge the businesses fees to be a part of it. So you can imagine, here's a bright-eyed 21-year-old coming out of university telling the businesses in their community that not only are they going to reduce emissions beyond regulation, but they're going to pay us a membership fee. And Elizabeth and I first met when not only did we start to make some progress on that idea in Waterloo Region, but other communities across the country and across Ontario started to take note. And we thought, okay, if we're going to get business to show up, we need high-profile speakers to come to these things. And so Elizabeth May, that's a high profile. And so I think one of the first times Elizabeth was at that Niagara Sustainability Initiative. I don't know how you do this. I don't know how you, all of the calendaring that you and Deb do to get yourself out to places across the country. But after 5 years of doing that work in Waterloo Region, and we had, some 20 or just under 20% of the workforce that was participating in that first, we now call it a green economy hub. Started to then support other communities across the country that were looking to do something similar. And so we started, supporting some folks in Niagara and then Hamilton, and it kind of kept going. And so we then started a national association. We called it Green Economy Canada. And then again, Elizabeth was on our speaker list, so she would join us at various of these meetings over the years. But, like I'm sure many of you have felt over the years, after about a decade of doing that work, it just felt so, meaningful. I don't want to diminish the work we were doing. I could tell you the tens of thousands of tons reduced and the hundreds of businesses that participate. But if our federal government's going to keep dumping billions of dollars to oil and gas, it just felt like, without changing the rules of the game, we're never going to go fast enough. And so it was in late 2018 when I read the most recent IPCC report that I'm sure many of you also read, that sounded the alarms. That's when I thought, maybe I need to shift tack here and consider to run for federal office at a time when we had just, the feds, if the two options are buy a pipeline or build more pipelines, I just thought, like, this is so absurd. And so I started to think about whether I'd run. And full disclosure, I've not been a long time, like you've all probably been members of the party longer than I have. In fact, when I was leading a nonprofit, I was so careful to be nonpartisan in all the work I was doing. And so I reached back out to Elizabeth again and said, hey, can we chat? I'm considering a run. And, I've always voted green. My values are green. And of course, Elizabeth said, sure, come on by. Did a little tour of the lobby and all the rest, and had a good conversation about the aspirations. This is in the 2019 election at the time. And for me, I chose running green because I feel it's at the time, and now even more so, it's the only party that gives me any chance of holding on to my sense of integrity. One thing I love about what you've done, Elizabeth, over the years is you've been able to stay beyond the fray of the politics of it all. I think, like me, I still have a hard time with the word politician. And now I feel so, now to be elected as a green, I don't have to play the game. I don't have to pretend that I believe one thing I don't like. I can be honest. The very first time I got to vote in the House of Commons, I look around me and the pages are dropping off a page to each MP that tells them how they're going to vote. Elizabeth and I are the only ones who didn't get these pages dropped at our desk. I got to turn to our parliamentary leader and have a conversation about how we're both going to vote. Like and that was the pitch. That was what it was. It wasn't even a pitch. It was more of just a conversation about integrity in this. It continues to be my view that politics is designed to either remove integrity from the person or remove the person with integrity from politics altogether. And Jody Wilson-Raybould would be a more recent example of that. And so for me now, well, I guess I can go back to 2 years ago when I decided to run. I made it really clear, had Elizabeth's support the whole way, that if I was going to run, we were going to run to win. This is not about changing the conversation or influencing the Liberals to hopefully take up, a stronger environmental ethic. We don't have time for that. We need to get Greens elected to be clear about the need to follow the science on climate, address the wealth inequality that only exacerbates all of it, and the hyper partisanship that makes it all worse. All things that you've all been working on for so many years. And again, every step of the way, we sought to run a campaign that would win back in 2019. Both Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Green Party of Ontario, and Elizabeth came out to that launch party. We had, I think it was 500 or so people. I think we had the media critiquing Elizabeth, saying that you were lying about how many people were at the launch party. Like, it was so silly. But we made it clear from the outset that we were intending on winning. And with the support of Elizabeth and the rest of the party, we built up a campaign that went from 3 to 26%. And one of the things I learned from that, and I did a talk with GreenPAC this morning about it, my view is there's nothing that special. I love Kitchener, of course. I actually happen to feel this is just I've spent only a few days on Salt Spring, but it happens to be my favorite part of the country. Ruckle Park for me is like a place of just pure joy. But my view is what we did in Kitchener is not unique to Kitchener. In my view, any riding where it's not sure, if they're getting 80% to a particular party and someone's deeply entrenched, I can appreciate that might be an uphill battle. In our case, the Liberal incumbent had about 47% of the vote in 2015. But it wasn't really about the person. It was more about the Trudeau wave in 2015. Any other riding like that, where there's not a deeply entrenched incumbent, and rather they're just kind of riding the coattails of the party. To me, there's 60 plus of these kinds of ridings across the country. With, in my case, it was existential. There's no BS to that deep sense of calling. I think with a candidate with that kind of sense of calling, with a campaign team that is equally committed, with the party getting behind that team and that person, we had that had the support of, Marianne Coleman and Elizabeth and so many others that came to coach and support and teach. My sense is we could be winning ridings across the country.
Yes.
By the end of 2019, one of the brief stories I like telling, I see that Robin's asking, I'm not sure if this is the story you're asking about, Robin, but one of my favorite highlights of the story I love from 2019, the end of the campaign, we're knocking on doors, and someone shares back with some of our volunteers. They said, the Liberals finally knocked on my door. And the person said to the Liberal, they said, what took you so long? They said, the Greens have been here twice already. And the Liberal says to the person at the door, they say, oh, we don't have the resources the Greens have. And then the person says back to the Liberal candidate, what are you talking about? You're Bud Light. They're the craft brew. Get your act together. That's how we saw the jump. It was just hundreds and hundreds of people with the support and the credibility of Elizabeth and the rest of the party to put in the work, to demonstrate every step of the way that we weren't going to complain about strategic voting. Yes, we need proportional representation, but in the meantime, we need to win in first past the post, which means raising the money that the big parties raise. It means working harder than they're going to work. We were the only ones at every bingo sheet from every advanced poll. The scrutineers were like, oh, it's the Greens again. We just put in the work. The way, like, I can tell there's 84 people on an AGM, not in an election year. The way you all are putting in the work, that's what we attempted to do in Kitchener Center. It takes multiple rounds, of course, because the question we got the whole time in 2019, it was always, tell me why you think you can actually win this from 3% to winning. The question in 2021, people stopped asking why you think you can win. The question became, why will you have an effective impact as a Green? Tell me the impact you're going to have. And of course, other parties came at us on how we were ineffectual. And what I would keep talking about is I'd go back to Elizabeth, I'd go back to Peter Bevan Baker, I'd go back to Mike, and I'd say, you know what? Look at the track record of elected Greens. That by working respectfully, by working across party lines, by putting democracy first and politics second, this is how Elizabeth has had 2 pieces of legislation passed: the Paris Galt Moraine Act for Mike Schreiner here in Ontario, the 14 or so bills that the PEI Greens. This is what Greens are known for. This is the track record we have, and this is why, as your MP, we're going to follow in those footsteps. And that's what we're now trying to do: is just learn as best I can, soak up as much as I can from Elizabeth and the rest of her team. To represent Kitchener Center well and do it within the values of the party. So I think that was more than 5 minutes. Hopefully something constructive there for hopefully at least know a bit more about who I am and what the heck happened in Kitchener Center and why I think, we could be doing this with the party, with Lorraine as president, with leadership from the party to bring more harmony, to come back to our values, and to focus on the priorities of our communities when it comes to the climate crisis that cuts through it all, when it comes to the affordability of housing, the opioid epidemic, mental health. If we can just keep focused on those priorities, my sense is, as Elizabeth has said before, we should already have 4 Greens in the House now. Well, you're going to hear from Elizabeth. That number is going to be even higher. I shouldn't ever purport to speak for Elizabeth. I believe we should at least have 4 in the House right now, and that we could have far, far more as we build back from this really difficult year. Can I take a question here, Dan? Is that okay if I run out of time?
Oh, absolutely. By all means.
Great. Okay, wonderful. So I see, thanks for the warm comments. That's always nice. Thanks, Harold and Robin as well. Linda's asking a surprise once I was sworn in, anything I'd not anticipated. One of the surprises, and again, this is having, sitting right next to Elizabeth has been really wonderful. I did not realize what it takes to get in terms of speaking in the chamber. So of course there's various, you're assigned speaking slots. I've had 1 assigned or actually 2 now. But I didn't realize every single day when Elizabeth is sitting in the chamber, she's just standing up and down, looking to get called on by the speaker. And of course, we don't have 25% of the seats, so we're not going to get to speak if they give one speaking spot to the opposition, one to the Bloc, one to the NDP, and one to us. We'd be kind of disproportionately represented. So, but I didn't realize just the amount of work. Elizabeth is just standing up time and time again on the spot. And this is something I need to now learn, is to not only be able to ask a strong question in question period, but to have the kind of encyclopedia of knowledge and the comfort that, the one day when the prime minister walked in, and we didn't expect him that particular day. This was like the Tuesday of my second week. The prime minister walks in, he's going to give a speech. We're all going to have a chance to ask a question. And so Elizabeth whispers over and says, Mike, this is your chance. Just stand up. I had no idea that this is how informal it was. You just stand up and you hope the speaker calls on you. And in this case, I was lucky. I had, on that, whatever it was, my 6th day in the chamber, I stood up and got called on and got to ask the prime minister about housing. But I didn't realize it was that open, that it's just a matter of standing up and getting called on. I also didn't anticipate, and I've really been pleasantly surprised by some of the folks who are deeply committed, as we are, to working across party lines. And it's not the norm. The heckling is, I think I can speak for Elizabeth and I both when I say that question periods is like the most depressing part of being in the chamber. It's really caustic. It's really unfortunate. And yet across every party, I can name you a few people that seem to be showing up every day, and you can tell by the words they're using. Folks like Richard Cannings from the NDP, folks like Ken Hardy in the Liberal Party, that they're actually being genuine, and they seem to be wanting to put forward policies first, and actually there with a place of curiosity and not just pure partisanship. Someone said to me on my very first day, you might have seen this in one of the fundraising emails, they said, Mike, I'm glad you're here. Greens are the conscience of this place. And truthfully, Elizabeth, I attribute a lot of that to you. You've earned that reputation over so many years, and trying to follow well in your footsteps. But I am surprised pleasantly by the number of MPs who've been open to, I just trying to make friends, right? I see myself as one of 338. Of course, I'm sitting next to Elizabeth. She knows everybody. Everybody's coming over to say hello and how's the parents and the kids and the grandkids. I've really appreciated how many folks have been open to a conversation and to hear what my priorities are from Kitchener Centre and willing to work together. The Bloc is another kind of bright spot too. I didn't realize I'm working on my French still. Mon français, c'est pas tellement bien. Celle d'Elizabeth, c'est meilleur plus. Je suis dans les formulations pour améliorer encore. But if you just start in French with a Bloc MP, I've really been impressed. Even in the lounge, Elizabeth may have shared, we don't even barely have a spot in the lounge. There's a little chair that says the word independent on it. And the Bloc have been kind enough, if I'm willing to work on my French, I can sit down with them and have lunch with them. That's been another really bright spot too. Thanks for the question, Linda.
Mike, this is really interesting to get a little behind the scenes look.
Yeah, happy to share it. To me, the House of Commons should be for all of us. So that my hope is my next blog post, similar to Elizabeth's kind of good Sunday morning news. I was thinking about doing a little bit of, observations from the chamber. I didn't realize, for example, there's a dress code, but for men only. Because I guess back when they decided on these, Elizabeth knows the history of Parliament so well. But my understanding is the men in the 1800s didn't even conceive the idea that women would one day be sitting there. And so it's kind of hilarious. The men all have to wear jackets and ties. The women, Michelle Rempel Garner, will show up in a sweater and she can just get up and start speaking. And so I've seen a few of the men who they keep ties in their desk. Elizabeth knows I don't enjoy wearing ties. And so I've seen some of the other men, they keep ties in their desk so that they don't have to wear, but if they have to speak, they'll throw it on really quick and then stand up and get their talking point in.
That's what clip-ons are for.
Well, exactly. Right? I haven't worn a clip-on since 12 years old, so I might get back to that again. Anyway, don't want to take too much of your time from your AGM.
Okay.
Again, really kind of you to invite me to be a part of it. So thank you. And also I wanted to say, Dan, thanks to you as well, because I know you've reached out to our EDA in Kitchener Center. I can tell you, we don't get 84 people to our AGM. The EDAs have a lot to learn from each other, and between yourself and others, I know you've been so open to helping coach other EDAs, which I think is a real service to the party. And certainly our EDA in Kitchener Center has got a lot to learn also. So I just wanted to say thanks for your outreach to us and to others to be sharing about how you've been able to build up the kind of engagement that you have, because it goes such a long, long way. Thank you. Thank you again.
Yeah, well, thank you for your words, Mike. And absolutely, it's true. No EDA stands alone, and no single member stands alone, and no politician stands alone. Without a team, you're toast. And it is really a strength through community. And so any part anybody can do to help build this community is beneficial for all of us. So you're now part of our top level community, and thank you for that.